Many of us have no idea that we have 16 official languages in the country. In most cases, we just think of isiNdebele and isiShona and English. So Away My Culture is basically going to be exploring on not all 16, but 10 ethnic groups working with fashion designers.
My favorite part was the huts and how they paint their huts.
We had to walk quite a bit of a distance, and I walked barefoot as well.
The Nambian language like Chini. The only thing I knew about the Shangani was that they're colorful.
They have missing teeth as well. That I found interesting.
I mean, have you seen it? It's Great Zimbabwe. I mean, I think that's what everybody takes away from Great Zimbabwe.
I learned a lot about how women differ from men in terms of culture.
Our cultures are expressed in various ways. Through our attire, through our architecture, through our sculpture, through our artistic performance.
Why it's called Away My Culture is because we want people to wear who they are with pride.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see you today here for the day 2. So I'd say for me, 2 things from yesterday. That when you're going to indigenous communities to tell their stories, make sure you're telling their stories from their point of view. Like you're just a medium, but allow them to tell their stories by themselves. And even when you're there, exercise ethics, exercise respect. Whatever they say, they do not want to be digitized or they do not want to go public or be in the public eye. Respect that. Literally play by their rules. That's how we'll be able to digitize and even keep like heritage or even enable them become allowing to allow us in their space. As for ones. For 2, now for us in the age of digitization and globalization and just making sure we stay grounded in our cultural heritage, is that we do not allow other people to tell our stories, but make sure when we are telling our stories, we are telling like it's Africa to the world. So in authenticity and you're grounded in our truth and what it is, and not being scared that what we call our heritage would be called not so cool and stuff like that. So in authenticity always, because authenticity is where the bloom begins and ends.
Thank you. How powerful. Authenticity is where the bloom begins and do we want to bloom? We want to blossom? We want to blossom. So thank you very much for your contribution and reminding us whose stories are important. My golden rule is always treat, as a storyteller or even a story harvester, treat others the way that you would want to be treated, right? You don't want a version of your story going out there which is not sanctioned by you. We shouldn't be doing this to others. So welcome to day 2 of okay, thank you. Just making sure we're all in the same meeting. And our hashtags, again, our hashtag culture grows, hashtag culture grows or hashtag culture grows 2025. I really want to encourage you to put your thoughts and share the ideas that you've gathered over the last 24 hours, or even 48 for those of us who are online on Wednesday, yes, and share those with the wider world. Follow the event on Instagram at East Africa Arts. And may I say, not for now, because we're about to start the session, but over the break, over the lunch break, I really encourage you, go and check out the exhibition space. Who has been there? The exhibition space? Thank you. Me, I've been there. I didn't arrive with this, right? And I'm promoting the creative economy because there's beautiful things out there. There's books, there's ideas, there's stories as well. So let's get to engage with the people in the exhibition space. Our program is online. Please use the QR code to download the program and see which exciting sessions we have for you today. And with that, we're going to our very first session, which asks the question, how can digital culture drive real change, right? Our moderator is David Waweru, who's a publisher with over 2 decades of experience in shaping Africa's creative and knowledge economies. In 2024, he was inducted into the Kenya Publishers Hall of Fame based on his leadership in the industry and his commitment to advancing the African story, like we just talked about, yeah? And so with that, I would like to invite Mr. Waweru to invite his panel to talk to us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mwehaki. And I will introduce the panelists while they are seated up front. May I invite you, please? So, how can digital culture drive real change? It's exciting to see you again. I was here yesterday. Extremely robust conversations and engagement from the floor. And today we look at the subject of digital culture and real change. And we gather under the banner of the Mondiacal Declaration, the outcome of UNESCO's World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development. And at the core of Mondiacal, we want to frame this so that our conversation today can be anchored in one direction. Mondiacal's declaration reaffirms culture as a fundamental human right. It recognizes culture as a global public good. And that means something that we all share and benefit from. The Mondiacal Declaration calls on each one of us to integrate culture into every level of policy. That means at the international level, at the national level, at the regional level, and at the national level, as a force of resilience, inclusion, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. What I would like us to do is to unpack today's theme. And it is anchored on 3 concepts. The first one is digital culture. What is that? Can we try to establish a common understanding? Digital culture basically is anchored on 2 key issues. One of it is technologies and practice. From social media to AI-enhanced curation to community-driven digital archives and 3D heritage mapping. The second thing it is anchored on are values, openness, participation, and the remixing of traditions in online spaces. Now, the second area that our theme today is anchored on, the second concept, is drive, all right? And what does that mean? It is how change happens. And that is basically through policy innovation, strategic investment, collaboration models, linking culture, digital technologies, and even climate action. And the final thing in our theme is the real change, the outcomes that we seek. And these are basically ethical and equitable access to digital tools for all persons. And that should divide basically including the low bandwidth areas, the difficult to reach communities. The restitution of artifacts, something that we will hear over and over again from our panelists, and the decolonized historical narratives. And the final thing on real change is climate resilient strategies for heritage preservation. To guide this conversation, I am delighted that we will be drawing from a very experienced panel, and they will anchor this conversation on just about 4 conventions from UNESCO. And those are the 1972 Convention on World Heritage. That is the one that protects outstanding sites. The second one is the 2001 Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity, and that's the one that values all forms of expression. The third convention is the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, and that convention basically celebrates living traditions. And the final convention in which I am an expert, international expert for, is the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, and that fosters. And I am honored that I am joined research and insights at the British Council, leading evidence and learning across flagship programs such as this Cultural Protection Fund and Cultural Heritage for Inclusive Growth. Topics that you can have conversations over after this session. Thank you very much. Oh, hello, Greta. Hello. And now here, were you hearing me? I can. A bit? Oh, I see. I'm sorry about that. Okay, that's how I actually sound, okay? On a good mic. And let me reintroduce Ian Thomas. Has spent the past decade as Global Head of Arts Research and Insights at British Council, leading evidence and learning across flagship programs such as Cultural Protection Fund and Cultural Heritage for Inclusive Growth. A former international visiting fellow at the University of Southern California's Center for Public Diplomacy, Ian has published widely on cultural heritage's role in sustainable development and UN SDGs. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in the UK, co-chair of its International Development Network, board member of Cultural Learning Alliance, and chair of the Liverpool. Come on, creatives. He's the chair of Liverpool City Region Music Hub, okay? How disappointing, Ian. And he holds degrees from Durham and Liverpool universities, okay? Not football club. And Ian, we are delighted to host you here, and you're welcome. To my left is Dr. Miriam Omolo, who oversees strategic vision and research agenda of the African Policy Research Institute. drawing on more than 20 years of expertise in international trade, development, policy, and poverty analysis, gained at institutions such as the Institute of Economic Affairs, a major think tank that many of us may be familiar with, African Affairs, and the African Economic Research Consortium. She brings a robust, evidence-based approach to her work. Dr. Omolo consults for the World Bank on poverty, inequality, and urban development in Kenya, and serves as adjunct faculty at Strathmore Business School. You may not know this, but I joined the business school this month. Her research interests encompass trade and development, poverty and welfare, public financial management, and emerging sectors including extractives and the digital economy. You're welcome, Dr. Omolo, and we are looking forward to hearing your perspectives. Applause for her. And of course for Ian. Hugh Gandeu Ngata. Mr. Hugh Gandeu Ngata taught us the other day online how to pronounce his first name. Serves as unit head and program specialist for social and human sciences at UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, based in Nairobi. Prior to this assignment, he was program specialist for social and human sciences at the UNESCO's Regional Office for Western Africa, based in Abuja, Nigeria, and for over more than a decade with UNESCO, Hugh has driven initiatives on the culture of peace, roots of enslaved peoples, the general history of Africa, and intercultural dialogue, and leads regional work streams spanning policy and foresight, disability and inclusion, gender engagement, fight against discrimination, academic freedom, youth empowerment, sports for development, and the ethics of AI. Talk of diversity. You're welcome, Mr. Hugh Ngata. Applause for him. And so, what's the objective of our conversation? Together, we will explore how digital culture, which we just explained, guided by Mondiacal's vision, can catalyze policies and deliver real, equitable, and lasting change for creative industries and heritage conservation across Africa. Let's begin. And I would like us to begin with very brief, lightning insights from our panelists. And we'd like to hear from each one of you. Would you each share one tangible example of digital culture driving change in your work? Would we start with you, Ian?
Well, good morning, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to be the awkward panel member here. I've got 9 examples, but I'm going to flag. We've launched, as British Council last month, a new report on digital cultural heritage. It's on our website. There were hard copies in the exhibition zone as well. But I'm going to draw on one example of the 9 that's in this report, and that's the Singing Wells project here in Kenya, in rural Kenya, and preserving intangible heritage, taking a mobile recording studio out into rural Kenya to look at that cross-section between digitization and social media, and capturing kind of local music, rural music, indigenous music, in its context, in its local context, in its reality. So it's not just about just archiving digitally the sounds, but making them and sharing them and making them relevant to a wider global audience. So that kind of global, local connection that we've been talking about over the past day, and that global to local connection. And what's really exciting about this is that digitization of intangible heritage, creating that virtual tourism, and also that diverse community global engagement with this very powerful music, and also preserving that as well. But also the sense of ownership, the local ownership of the music, the local ownership of the content. So it's not just about sharing and preserving, it's about advocating, sharing, and that local ownership as well. it's here, full details is here in the report. I'll say I would just like to signpost you that because I think my 2 minutes are probably up there. But yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, for that. Digitization of intangible heritage, and created a completely new stream in terms of virtual tourism, and of course, creating greater ownership much more widely. And thank you very much. And the specific focus is music. Well, thank you very much for that. And we will go to my left, and we'll hear from Dr. Omolo. Would you kindly also give us one tangible example of digital culture driving change in your work?
Thank you very much. As already introduced, I'm Dr. Miriam Omolo, and here I'm coming from Strathmore University, Strathmore Institute of Public Policy and Governance. So the interest here, we are looking at what are the policy issues that actually drive culture in the context of the 5th industrial revolution. So we are talking digital governance. What does it take? Because you can be very happy right now with your culture, with your inventions, within a cultural context. It can easily go away when you put it in social media, and it will not become yours. So we finished a framework paper. This was actually financed under the African Economic Research Consortium, and we were looking at policy issues. What laws do we need to put in to protect our digital heritage from a data protection perspective? So when you see the laws on data protection, cultural heritage is one of the beneficiaries of protecting this information. Then who are the stakeholders? Remember, when we talk about culture and heritage, it's a public good. So we are trying to make sure, in as much as it's a public good, we are going to gain from it. But how do we gain from it in a systematic manner? Because if it's public, anyone can take it. The characteristics of a public good is you cannot exclude anyone from consuming. And even there is no competition. So survival for the fittest. So what laws can govern digital heritage? And it's a very, very big and complicated area. Now, when we bring trade, it means your information can move outside your country, outside your region. How do you even integrate your laws within the region so that everyone, even if you move to Tanzania or you move to Mozambique, you're still protected with the same laws? That is part of the work that we've just completed. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Omolo. So many things that she's talked about. And the key thing about cultural digital governance for culture, developing a framework paper that basically one of the outcomes is policy and legal frameworks, mapping of the stakeholders, because you know how the sector, so how fragmented the sector gets, and a lot of silos, everybody operating in their own silo, and we'll get to that conversation later. And then systematizing the cultural value chain. And that is from creating to producing to distributing, and of course to consumption, which he has talked about. And then of course the issues regarding around trade. And you're talking about internal trade and cross-border trade and international trade, addressing very critical issues. Well, thank you very much for that. And now we'll hear from Mr. Hugh Gandel.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here and happy to be part of this very important conversation. Thanking the British Council for setting the scene for this discussion ahead of Mondial Cult. And maybe also making a very nice comment about where we are seated, because I didn't know about the setting, but the fabric you see on this chair is from Cameroon. is from my people, is from the Bamileke people, and actually is from royalty. So I'm like seated on a throne right now. But I'm not sure if anyone from that tribe is aware that this is right here and being used this way. And this is very well also putting the stage to the discussion we are having in terms of ownership, in terms of use, in terms of consumption of culture. As the moderator introduced earlier, UNESCO has a lot of standard setting role. And maybe that's also where I want to come from, including connecting to what my previous panelists said. What is it that is in place as standard to guide this conversation as we are moving forward to digitalization and the different way we are consuming, reacting to culture and heritage? Are we ready for that? Is it happening the way it should be? And in terms of giving a recap from yesterday's discussion, she said very well about the place of the community, the owner, the custodian. How do they come into place in that? And mentioning that, maybe also trying to oblige to the question of the moderator in terms of giving examples. In some of the work that we are doing as UNESCO, really trying to empower better the community, trying to promote digitalization of cultural heritage with a project that is happening, for instance, in Le Monde Cultural Landscape World Heritage, that is in Mauritius, where a lot is being done in terms of engaging with the community, making them part of a digitalization process that fits into the better knowledge of their culture. They are being part of the process of making it available out there and so on and so forth. And maybe also reminding all of us what happened during COVID and the way the whole cultural and creative sector was challenged. And the UNESCO launched this Resilient initiative that has been a growing movement about how to better promote culture and creative industry, including in a period where you cannot consume culture the traditional way it's done. So that is also another good example and space that is kind of advancing the conversation on digitalization, on the different way of engaging and reacting with culture and heritage. Thank you.
Oh, Hugh, thank you very much, and delighted to know that the fabric is from Cameroon. I was afraid you were going to ask how it was acquired. Absolutely. and thank you very much for the very specific examples you've given regarding addressing the issues of ownership, regarding the issues of use, consumption, empowering communities on digitalizing heritage. And you've given us a very an active case study from Mauritius. And I think that's really, really great. And of course, then taking us back to things that emerged, a movement that emerged out of COVID-19, the resilient movement. So thank you very much. And let's now focus on the three issues we addressed a little earlier. And we'll start with policy pathways and investment. And I'd like to ask Thomas to kindly take us through a few things. And I will lead by asking a long question. Ian, there are key moments on the horizon, just this year alone, in the next 12 months, such as the Mondiacult outcome document this September, and the UN Summit of the Futures Digital Compact Annex. How can policymakers and funders seize these windows of opportunity to embed cultural heritage perspectives into broader digital and development agendas, rather than the issue of siloing them? And before you come on, what would you say are some specific investment pathways that they should pursue, and to ensure the cultural and creative industries and heritage conservation thrive in a digitally driven world?
Thank you for that question. So, as we know, there's a number of big key moments coming up over the next 12 months. Mondacop being one. We've got COP, which is the big climate change UN conference coming up later this year as well. And what we're starting to see is culture and heritage playing a role in those kind of global conversations. So one of the key things we're trying to do is move culture out of the culture debate and into those climate change debates, into the digitization debates, into the AI debates. So taking it out of the echo chamber, we're very good as a heritage and culture sector talking to ourselves, but how do we get the power of heritage and the power of culture into those trade conversations, into those digital AI conversations, and into those kind of climate change conversations? So one of the conversations we're having is around something called the International Development Banks, for example, who there's one for Africa, for example, there's one in Europe, for example, and they're having a growing role within the creative economy ecosystem. So we know that 46% of the International Development Banks are funding heritage programs, heritage restoration programs, either through direct grants, through technical support programs, through loans as well. So we are seeing that these banks traditionally have been funding infrastructure projects or digital projects or rebuilding transformation type projects, but they are growing. They are increasingly getting involved in the creative industries, in cultural heritage and creative economy type programs. So the Interdevelopment Bank for the Americas, for example, has 120 projects funded around heritage and the creative economy going on at the moment. The International Development Bank for Europe, for example, is funding heritage projects in places like Albania and Romania, for example. And the link they're making is to job creation, to sustainable growth, inclusive growth, that they see heritage as we talked about yesterday, one of those great equalizers, for example. So we're seeing heritage playing a greater role across the SDG framework. We're seeing heritage being used, deployed more for those development type outcomes. But we're also seeing, for example, the African Development Digital Financial Framework, for example, which was launched last year, for example. So we're starting to see heritage and culture starting, and it is the start of getting into those big policy conversations, into those big financial conversations, but we need to do more. And we need to take our kind of evidence and our learning and our insight from our heritage work and our cultural work into those non-cultural conversations and continue, and it's a continual debate, making the case for culture against frameworks like the SDG, into those UN political high forums type conversations, for example, where culture doesn't get in, so to speak. So that's where we need to work as a sector, together as partners at a local level, at a regional level, at a global level. So it is a multi-stakeholder, multi-partner initiative, really, we need to do. But there is, as I say, growing funding from development banks. We're seeing heritage come more into the research and innovation funding, like in the UK, for example. The UK Research and Innovation Group has just put £1 million into the UK's first National Centre for Digital Cultural Heritage in Liverpool. That's non-heritage funding, that's coming from our research and innovation funding. We are seeing the EU Commission, for example, putting millions into heritage protection, heritage resilience around climate and digital, for example, and a new partnership programme next year, €200 million programme around heritage, climate, and includes a huge strand on digital innovation within that. So it's beginning. The money's starting to come, the policy frameworks are starting to come. There's still work to do, but it's got to be evidence-formed, insights, data-driven, but talking the language of those development banks, those policymakers. So we've got to translate and do that bridging work between heritage, digital, and those sectors.
Well, isn't that wonderful? And maybe very quickly before we come to the next question, is what are the initial results of these conversations? Is basically moving lateral, it's like a lateral jump and moving across horizontally to all the conversations, not just within culture and heritage, but across very many other domains. What are some of the initial outcomes that you're starting to experience?
Yeah. So the UN, for example, last month published its SDG progress report, and buried within there was a section on heritage funding. And over the past 5 years, governments had increased, which is quite a surprise, had increased their funding on heritage and heritage initiatives to $21.72 per person globally is being spent on heritage protection and heritage initiatives. So we're starting to see that coming through. I think the key thing we've got to do is talk the language of policymakers and that translation to policymakers and having the hard evidence base against those, not necessarily just the SDG framework, but also when we're talking to international development bags, it's job creation, it's sustainable tourism, it's inclusive growth type conversations, and having the evidence and the data to go into those conversations.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll stay to the right this time, and I'll ask you, focusing on the second pillar that we talked about, ethics and access. Hugh Mondiacult proclaims culture as a global public good. And yet, as we digitize heritage, film, music, and other art forms, we face critical trade-offs. And that's a reality. How can restitution efforts responsibly employ digital surrogates without supplanting real-world engagement? One part of the question. Second part of it, who should rightfully own, govern, and sustain these digital access tools? Because right now they are concentrated in the hands of a few in certain parts of the world. And ensure authenticity, local agency, and equitable benefit of African communities. And I'm glad you started off talking about communities. And how do we ensure that digital surrogates amplify, not replace, community ownership? What guardrails prevent extractive digitization?
Thank you very much. Maybe for the sake of the audience, you will understand that I'm not that smart to answer the question that way, and that this is actually the thematic for a whole symposium. But it's a very important question in line with the conversation we are having, and you mentioned very well the background with Mondiacult and connecting with different standard setting instruments that UNESCO is kind of deploying in that reality. The question is really important and multifaceted. It touched upon different considerations about cultural sovereignty, cultural diplomacy. You mentioned a lot about restitution, authenticity, the digital ethics related thereto, and how the future of heritage stewardship should be kind of discussed. I will not be exhaustive, but I will try my best to give some pointers to this conversation and for the sake of our discussion. So maybe in considering and seeing how important we need to make sure that the trade-off we are kind of considering in this discussion are kind of underlined and properly understood by everyone, because we speak about culture, we speak about heritage. We are in a global context where the way it's consumed, the way it's shared is kind of changing. You mentioned about AI, which is bringing, again, another layer of complexity in the whole conversation. So let's think, for instance, about culture as a global public good, as promoted by Mondiacult. And at the same time, what does it mean when it comes to the impact or the consideration vis-a-vis local ownership of the same? In Mondiacult, we want to see, as the previous speaker said, the culture that is accessible everywhere, that is in the public domain, meaning everyone can take it and make what they want from it. But this can also contribute to displacing physical engagement with heritage. It can also lead to the extraction of values. We are speaking about a particular artifact of cultural heritage without equitable return of what it is that is benefiting those who are using it. I mentioned, and you said that I will not ask how they acquire it. I mentioned about this fabric. It can be about different other things. It can be about the way we see museums and the way they are all over the world, full of artifacts that are from different places. And if you start questioning the way they reach some of those museums, it comes with so much ethical consideration that you will really want to see what is possible to ensure the effective governance of those. And that's also where UNESCO is coming, because we are creating the enabling framework for some of this conversation to happen. When we speak about cultural diplomacy, when we speak about restitution, you mentioned a list of UNESCO convention and standard setting instrument, but you didn't mention the 1970, which is about the illicit trafficking of cultural objects, but it's also governing the whole process of restitution. We have in place an intergovernmental committee at UNESCO that is really the space where a particular country can address a request for restitution of a particular artifact that is situated somewhere. And a whole diplomatic, a cultural diplomacy is happening that is leading to the like of the return of the Vigango that were celebrated in Kenya. Or earlier, last month, we saw the return of more than 100 bronze from the Benin people in Nigeria. So, and those artifacts were in the Netherlands. So I'm mentioning all of these for us to have a clear picture of where is it that we are engaging. Do we have the full understanding and even awareness of our culture we are speaking about? Let's speak about its digitalization. And when it comes to digitalization, we are engaging into some ethical compromise. We should be aware of it. Is everything worth digitalizing? When we speak about culture and heritage and artifacts, they goes with values, they goes with spirituality, they goes with a lot of the cosmogony attached to a people. Some of them were never meant to be in a public space. They were never meant to be in a museum, but some are there, and the process is kind of irreversible. So what is the setting we are creating to ensure that when Kenya is developing its Data Protection Act, there is consideration for anything that will affect digitalization of cultural objects? How do we ensure that, and I want to wonder if we are aware in this audience that in March this year, Kenya launched its national AI strategy. We are speaking about AI, we are speaking about digitization, but a strategy of that nature, if it has not properly involved those from the cultural and creative, it means there will be loopholes. There will be missed opportunity to capture exactly what should have been captured to ensure that we have this stewardship, this agency that is integrated so much so that a community whose property is decided to be digitalized, they were part of the process, they will be part of the conversation for curation, they will have a kind of connection with how it will be displaced on the public space out there. And this will be with their consent. And when displaced on a platform, who owns the platform? Who manages the platform? What is the return of investment in displaying the property? And how much the originating community is kind of benefiting from all of that. So that calls for a lot that could not be just unpacked on a little conversation, and that requests really that every single aspect is segmented, fully assessed, so that we know exactly what we are trading. We know exactly that we are kind of surrendering part of our originality, part of our authenticity, because when you speak digitalization, you cannot digitalize the spiritual value on a cultural artifact. Impossible. And even if you put some writing out there, it will not say it all. So how do we make it effective? So much so that both the community and the willingness that, yes, culture is a public good is achieved in the right way. So I will leave it at this point, and thank you for the question.
And thank you for the masterclass, isn't it? I can't even attempt to unpack what he said, but I think I will highlight just one or two things, which he said towards the end. And this is the issue of awareness of our cultural assets, because it all begins there. And it's all a question of, it begins with mapping, whether communities and what processes there are of mapping our cultural assets. And then distinguishing between what should and what cannot be digitized. And that's a decision of the communities. And that consensus, that involvement in a participatory process of ensuring that no one is left behind in terms of decision making. And there is ownership, from the beginning all the way to building the necessary digitization platforms or structures. And with that, you alluded to cultural sensitivity. And each culture is very different. And it takes time to understand how to bring up issues like digitization, which is, even amongst high-tech savvy people, especially when you talk about AI, is still a very fuzzy kind of world, and it's because of the pace of rapid change. What AI was only 3 months ago is not the same as it is today. And that speed of change is quite riveting. And thanks a lot bringing up Kenya's national AI strategy and the question of how participatory has that process been in terms of consensus building. Well, thank you very much. And allow me now to come to the left. And Dr. Omolo, let's talk about things that were alluded to by Hugh. And low bandwidth access. For those who live in cities, and there are certain privileges people live with, and don't understand the difficulties, because we are digital nomads basically. And I wonder, Modiakal's affirmation of culture as a global public good. However, in many African contexts, low bandwidth constraints, several constraints, severely limits digital heritage access. Who should underwrite and sustain the necessary infrastructure? Governments, telecom operators, cultural institutions, or community-led initiatives? And what financing or partnership models can ensure both affordability and genuine local ownership? Talked about local ownership, but genuine local ownership. Beyond infrastructure, how can community-led models, for example, mesh networks, offline archives, ensure access aligns with Mondiacal's inclusive participation as in tenet 10 of the declaration?
Thank you very much. It's a very long question, and I'm happy to the best of my ability and the time allowed. First of all, I want to pick from Hugh's intervention, awareness of our cultural assets. Are we aware? What are our cultural assets? And I'm very happy. I'm seeing a very mixed group here, very youthful, and that makes me happy. Are you aware of your cultural assets? That's the first question. Or is it just the music? Is it the arts only? I know arts is broad. Is it traditional knowledge? Just take a good example. During the COVID season, everyone was aware you go to hospital and there was no medication. For me, I was seeing someone in hospital up to ICU, but I never got COVID. Because outside my compound, I have a guava tree. And all I would do in the morning is boil the guava leaves. Drink it morning, lunch, and evening, and go to hospital and nothing would happen. Traditional knowledge. How many of you know that there are some leaves, when you're coughing, the doctor will tell you, take this, take that. It won't work. But you just go, and even for children, pick some leaves, crush it. Just make them smell it. They will sneeze and remove everything, instead of getting the ointment from the pharmacy. How many of us know that? What are you considering as your digital assets? So back to your question, it is a public good. Someone will discover it and take it elsewhere and use it for profit. We are not even aware. So who should bring the infrastructure? Remember, it's a public good. You cannot exclude anyone from consumption. And even if someone consumes, it doesn't stop you from consuming. If they made money out of it, why can't you make money out of it? Can you create your own infrastructure? So it takes us back to government. Then now we are bringing digital issues. You want to digitize or you want to digitalize a process. Who should be in charge? My first answer is, it is government. That is why we are paying taxes. When we cannot take care of our public goods, it is financed through our taxes. So low bandwidth that can facilitate digitalization of processes must come from government. But I want to ask right now, no, I know it's not time for a question, but you can raise your hands. How many of you know, where does culture fall? In which ministry? Sports? Culture? Gender? Who is the minister or who is the CS? Yeah, people are saying. Who is the CS for finance? There you go. Yeah. We also don't know, because where have we put our premiums? You know the CS for finance, but you don't know culture. So first of all, the infrastructure has to come from government. They have to do the bandwidth, but remember, bandwidth is telecommunications. We have so many moving parts. So we can talk of bandwidth for, are we talking of bandwidth for digital or digitizing our national heritage? Are we talking about it for studying? Remember, these bandwidths have so many uses. So you find cultural heritage will remain down. We have to do sensitization with the infrastructure, and the funding model is public finance or public-private partnerships with a strong framework where local communities are the ones who store that data, where you've now created your bandwidth and you need the cloud. The cloud should be in Ukambani, where information is coming from. So it's a very broad spectrum. Where is private sector? Private sector is very important, but the research we've done so far, they will come through the corporate social responsibility. What is the priority when they do corporate social responsibility? It's branding. So when you see Coke putting water in a dry area, they will put a Coca-Cola logo. When you see Safaricom, so the first thing for them is branding, not public good. So it has to go back to government. Then we have our local communities, and I want to bring the non-governmental organization who are usually on the ground. They will only put infrastructure to the extent that funding allows. And I will give you a good example. When I was at the Institute of Economic Affairs, we did an intellectual property and traditional knowledge project. The outcomes went into Article 11 on culture of the Constitution and 63, because when you're talking heritage, you have to talk environment. So Article 63 as well. The moment the funding ended, the project ended. So who should fund it? According to me, it's government. But even before you talk about the low bandwidth, have we navigated this culture and heritage space properly to bring out our assets? And then how do we start even trading? So we have to look at the value chain. Another debate for another day. I would like to stop here because I can go on and on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Omolo. I would like to have... Thank you. I'd like to have a follow-up question. You started off by asking an awareness question about where the culture docket falls, and who the CAs and on are. And we all know, if we look at the national government, the national priorities, and those priorities, you really get to know what is a priority when you look at the budget, the national budget. And you look at the annual budgets, you look at the medium-term plans and the budgets, on and on. So when you talk about government underwriting, and yet culture is, I think, the lowest funded ministry of government. Money goes to education, to infrastructure, and to all the other dockets except culture. Culture receives one of the lowest. Rather, the ministry in charge of culture. And when you come to the ministry, sports is lumped together with culture, which takes the bigger part of the budget. And so you see from the big budget, if you look at it as a funnel, by the time you come to culture alone, there's very little left. So if government underwrites that with the reality of the of where culture lies in terms of priority, what are we exactly saying? And what needs to happen to change that order of priority? Because the Constitution of Kenya places culture at basically the top. But money is not put where our talk is. How do we change that narrative?
I don't know whether we want to change a narrative. We just want to be strategic. You've said culture is at the top, but you've brought, in terms of ministry, it's lowest with low funding. Does culture work in isolation? No. You find culture in health, true. You find culture in education. You find culture in sports. So culture is cross-cutting. So it's the leadership, this is my opinion, and it's a lot of work, the leadership within that culture docket to make sure they have money all over. Because ministries don't work in isolation. There's interministerial activities that has to be done, and it has to be done well. But again, it depends on how strategic one wants to be. That is the first thing I would say. And then secondly, this is more socio-political. There are these ministries we think don't, you know, you want key ministries that hold fort. Blow your trumpet. Let's talk about climate, for example. There's a lot of culture issues in climate. How did we know about the Mau forest? Because we had a strong minister for environment at that time. So when you feel you're being put down or there's something at the lower level, you just have to think strategically and then work at a cross-cultural, interministerial level and push for your agenda. You throw it there, plant a seed there. Yeah, you now have to be strategic. Changing thinking is quite some work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the key thing you've put across is the need for inter-ministerial coordination of culture, isn't it? And okay, and I think that's really, really key. How much? Okay, all right. Now, I would have wanted to come to actionable takeaways. And I think if I gave you only 1 minute, because we have a very short time, and then come to the audience. Now, if you need bundle, I would like you to participate on a poll that will be put up in just about 4 minutes. And so if you need bundle, just get to it and get to participate on this. But just 1 minute, Ian, what policy levers would you suggest?
So just echoing a little bit of previous conversation, we need to get better at telling our impact story. So when we're talking to ministers beyond the culture ministry, being able to tell our story around culture and heritage that responds to those different ministries, to those different government ministries and those different funders, so those public-private partnership funders all need different stories, but we've got sort of powerful stories in our armoury. So it's being more confident and using our powerful stories around heritage, around digitization, and speaking the language of those, getting out of the cultural bubble and talking the language of the education ministry or the treasury, for example, the finance ministry, for example. And so doing that translation, but getting out there and being confident of our stories, our evidence and our learning and our insight, and being out there to lever in those funding and those, but also get into those policy conversations. So when Kenya has an AI policy, that culture is in those conversations, in the room, with its stories, with its evidence, and it's not missing. So yes, it's being really confident about the story, the narrative, and speaking those languages. Yeah.
So powerful storytelling tailored to very specific audiences to engage them in a language that they understand. Thank you very much. And Hugh, probably, just one field example that you can share with us.
Thank you very much. Since it's only one, let me be a bit more on my own docket and mention the area of edutainment, where we are working with some developers to develop 3D animated games. And that's also an attempt to connect with the youthful audience. If I mention the general history of Africa that UNESCO developed, that is a full combination of decolonization of knowledge about Africa, but also connecting with the African heritage and culture, combined in a series of volumes that are so bulky that is difficult to digest, even for the scientists. So we are taking it a step down in terms of creating more way of digitalization and dissemination. And edutainment is one of those that I wanted to mention, where the history can be used to develop games, and in the games you include very specifics that will allow knowledge on your history, but also on your tradition and culture. And you can even zoom into more specific aspect. If I say the slave trade and slavery in the Kiswahili coast, you can unpack it through a video game, and we are doing that. So these are some of the examples I want to mention.
Digitalization, gamification, and still being aware of low bandwidth communities. Thank you very much. And Dr. Omolo, we talked about ethical, equitable access. What would be what core criteria would you propose? And for building an equity checklist?
Okay. How much time do I have?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. One of the things that has to be in that checklist, community, ownership, and consent. They are the knowledge holders. So that community, ownership, and consent must be there. And I want to add youth very strongly under community. Okay? because they must have that consent. They are the ones with the knowledge. They are the ones who are innovating. Benefit sharing to avoid exploitation. What are the laws? What are the regulations that have to be put in place? Revenue sharing frameworks. What remains at government level? What goes to the community? What goes to the innovators? Very important. It must be contextualized, traditional knowledge, because you can tell the truth, but when you tell the truth in the wrong context, you're lying. Contextualizing traditional knowledge must be part of that checklist. And then data protection for traditional knowledge or cultural heritage, very important. It has to go with capacity building. The frameworks might be there, but people don't know. So it will not be helpful. You must have a grievance redress mechanism so that when the community, when the people are not happy, there's an area to address it. Some of these things are being worked on, but maybe we do not have much information, but that's a checklist I would give in a summary.
Awesome. In 1 minute and a half, you've given like 5 or 6. Thank you very much. And now it's your turn, all right? I know that, so we'll start first with the media team. If you could put up the poll, and if we have a minute or two, then we'll come to the audience. On your devices, you'll see 4 potential enablers for driving real impact at the intersection of digital culture and heritage. So what we would like you to do is you will go to slido.com. Can you all see? You go to slido.com, and then you will enter the poll number 2872916. All right? And then you will get to poll, and we will see the live polling as you do that. And we'll basically surface what you consider as the priorities. Okay? Okay. Community-led governance and consent, 30%. All right. Voting is at 50%. I think you're doing a great job. Okay. Sustainable financing models, policy coherence, the two of them jostling. Okay, now that we are coming towards the end, I will do 2 things. I would like to have a reflection from probably only one person. Instead of going to the 3 of us, of the panelists, we probably have a reflection from 1 or 2 of you, and then we'd like to surface. I can see some hands going up. We'd like to see, maybe we could have a mic going to you, please. All right. What are your reflections on the participants polling? It seems like policy coherence, okay. All right, I think there's text that is not visible at the top. Is it possible? Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, who would like to respond to what's happening, the thinking of the participants? Dr. Molo, you want to say something? Half a minute?
Yes. The first 2 go together. You don't get it right, you'll not even have a sustainable financing model. So that priority is a very accurate picture from a policy perspective. Yeah.
Highly engaged audience, and you've surfaced the issues. Shall we now come to the audience? And we have one contribution here. If we could have a mic here, we have, how long do we have? 10? Oh, we are doing very well, actually. Okay, all right. We'll have contribution here, the first one. We'll have a second contribution here and a third one. And on this side, could we have a mic on this side? The two back rows. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the panel. It's very interesting. The overall objective of the conference talks about the digital age. I have an observation and a question, but I'll try to be really fast. And I would say that the digital age requires a new form of thinking. Digital age is not linear. It's crowdsourced. It's multiple. It's about thinking differently. It's not just about technology. And I guess, to what extent do you feel, within the work that you do, that we have kind of an older guard who are almost gatekeeping any advances in this sector? We have, I mean, I don't know how many restitutions UNESCO has actively implemented in the last 15 years. I don't know how much action actually happens on the ground. I do know that there are a lot of committee meetings and strategy and policy and conferences and all the things. And for the most part, those are important and they happen, but they happen presuming a very linear form of development. You know, we go to communities. Communities are homogenous. I mean, we've talked about community as if it's one thing, and it's only a geographic community, which is another thing at the digital age. We all form part of different kinds of communities. And then we do consultations, and then we do this, and then we go back to the community, and then we do X, Y, Z. Working in the heritage sector on this continent for the last 20-odd years, the pace is so slow, because we don't do open source. We are gatekeeping any kind of crowdsourcing youth involvement. We are ensuring that one has to go before the other, and unless there's that trajectory, nothing happens. And what you see here, and especially in Kenya at the moment, is you're seeing a fundamental paradigm shift where youth movements are saying, okay, none of this is serving us in any way. Not the way government is organized, not the way voting is organized, not electoral politics. This is not serving us. And we are not even going to go out and vote. Everyone kind of, finger wags and says, well, you have to vote. It's like we organize in different ways entirely. So I am asking, to what degree in the worlds that you live in do you make space for what I think is an incredibly important way of thinking in the culture and heritage sector, which will allow people to make their own plan, to allow people, once things are crowdsourced and open source, et cetera. I understand there's a fear of IP in the big companies and Google and all the rest of it. But in our fear of that and in gatekeeping and saying government has to do this and that and the other, how much are we preventing really true innovation and a youth-led communities movement?
Thank you very much. Now, we'll pick a number of questions before we respond to that. And who would like to respond to that? So that, okay, you will respond to that later. I think we have a hand here. Now, could you make it concise, brevity?
I'll do my best. Okay, so today I'm not going to assume you guys know me. My name is Eugene Mugai. I'm a film director. And Korea, I think, is a proof of concept of what media can do to sell culture to the world and to its own people. And for me as a filmmaker, we have, talking around policy, I can't, take a picture even, in the museum without being charged if I have a camera. If I have a phone with a poor camera, that's okay. But if I have a really good camera that can actually help promote this space, I am charged a lot of money. So just, around unpacking how we can collaborate with people like us who are creators, who can create stories that can actually showcase how amazing these places are, but because of gatekeeping and things like restrictions and old models of, we can't do that.
Excellent, thank you very much. Powerful storytelling came up, but we can't tell those stories because of the limitations. Now, was there one question and then we come to this side, all right? Now, who will answer that question amongst the panelists? You, 5 minutes, huh? Okay, good. Who will? You will, huh? Hugh will do that. Okay, one question, and then unfortunately, we'll have only two more questions, and then we come to the responses. Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Moseti. We've spoken about digitization of our cultural heritage. Now, I'd want to ask, what is the role of us as individuals to participate in these efforts? Do we leave these efforts for the institutions or organizations only, or do we have to set foot in it and participate? For example, when I go back home and my grandmother tells me of a narrative that I think is some sort of cultural related, can I record it and be able to post it somewhere or direct it to the National Archives? Or do I have to engage with the organization and institutions for it to be placed on the archives? Yeah.
Really powerful questions. Unfortunately, we'll take only one question. And if you don't mind, could we have the lady right at the back answer the question? Who will answer? Ian will answer that question, okay? One more question, and then we'll have like half a minute or 45 seconds. All right? Yes, please. Unfortunately. Anybody else with a working mic? Okay. Now, so that we respect the time of the next session, unfortunately, I think we'll take just those three questions. And Dr. Omolo, maximum 45 seconds.
All right. I'll answer very quickly. And also adding to, you cannot limit the youth from maximizing their potential. That one it's a non-negotiable, it's natural. So I'll just give a quick example. M-Pesa, to answer your question, became innovative because the central bank governor at that time was quite flexible with the laws and the regulations. He said, continue innovating and doing what you're doing. If there is a problem, then bring in laws and regulations and not the other way around. So in this space as well, you will find gatekeepers for several reasons. But an idea that its time has come will have to come to the fore. So that is a model I think can be adopted. We must have laws, yes, but let people innovate. And where there is a problem, and bring in regulation and laws to protect, to facilitate innovations. But remember, back to your question, you can put the innovation out there, but also think as an entrepreneur. Okay, what next? Someone can use it for income, so you have to think. Thanks.
Democratizing institutions of the governance of culture and ensuring inclusive participation. Thank you very much. And I think the other question was yours.
And I think she already gave part of the answer. So the digital era and the access to what is there, or how much are we able to digitalize and to make available broadly, beyond the aspect of regulation, is also the tools for that to happen, or even the access to the very culture or heritage we want to digitalize. And in some of our contexts, majority of it is not even at home. So in terms of speaking gatekeeping, also let's think how much the industry, let's say the museum industry, is protecting itself, especially out there, for property that has been looted for decades and that is securely kept somewhere where you will have no access, and they are the one dictating how the digitalization process is happening and how your story is told. So think about that.
Thank you, Hugh. And Ian?
Yep. So heritage and culture are messy, living organisms. So it's got to be homegrown, it's got to be locally led, it's got to be co-created and based in its community. We've got to be curious. And we've got to find a way to decentralize digital efforts within culture and heritage, otherwise it will not work.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you so much for your participation, for being extremely patient, and for giving that we couldn't take all the questions, all right? And I think that opens the way for the conversations to continue during the breaks, and get to have conversations with the panelists, and we just want to thank the panelists for making those brilliant contributions. Thank you very much, and back to Mwihaki. I must have taken 2 or 3 minutes, Mwihaki. Am I forgiven? Publicly.
You must be forgiven, but we'll have that conversation outside again. So, wasn't that amazing? I'm taking away that not all culture can be digitized, especially the intangible. Yeah? And when I think about even to books, oh, sorry, wait, first and foremost, before I go on, where's my photographer? To come and take the, okay, you can take the photo of them as I continue with the audience. There were things that were not written down when anthropological studies were done. So we lost our music, we lost so much. And so it's a recurring question. We just have a different form of documenting. But we still have to ask the question, how do we not lose things along the way? So I want to make a couple of announcements. Please remember the bathrooms that we're using are the ones in the car park, the portable ones. We're leaving this for the school visitors. I think there's some people who are standing at the back. There's some more seats. And if your bag is on a seat, please just make space for someone to actually sit on it. Yeah? So there's seats now which you can move into. And then I'm again going to give a plug for the exhibition. Who has been to the exhibition space? 1, 2. You guys are missing out. There's books, like I say, there's ideas, because some of them are conversations about the projects themselves, like the Bajuni project, like the Malison's architects. So please spend some time during lunch at those places. There's Action for Hope, Sounds of Freedom, Tika, Première Agence Internationale. So take advantage of all of that. We're going to move now to our next panel, which is going to be led by Skinder. I saw him. Oh, there he is, yes. Skinder Hundal, who is an associate of the World Cities Culture Forum. He also is an alliance member of Davos Bauculture, which is an initiative of the World Economic Forum. He's a distinguished arts leader and cultural leader with an extensive background in the very topics that we're discussing today. And in addition to being the chair of the Cultural Leadership Board for the Westlands Combined Authority. And because you never lose your friends, he used to work at British Council, right? So don't lose your friends. Don't burn bridges. They won't invite you back.
Well, thank you very much, Moi. It's a delight to be back in Kenya, Nairobi. I'm going to do a little energizing sort of start. I want everybody from Nairobi City to stand up and share their energy. The hosts of Nairobi. Wonderful, wonderful. So all the people of Nairobi, you are hosting us. Thank you very much. And it's good to see so many people from the local city, the local heritage of this great capital city, hosting such an important conversation. So please be seated, yes. First, I'd like to thank Professor Kimani for inviting me with British Council, Tom, Sandra, Maureen. It's always a pleasure to be back in an important space of dialogue. So welcome to this session, Global Ties, Local Vibes. How do community projects, culture bring together? So panelists, please join me, panelists. And I'm going to introduce all the panelists in just a minute. But as they arrive on stage, I just wanted to say a few words. So we live in interesting and precarious times, and technology is already outpacing the human mind, it seems. And at play, perhaps, is this idea that a humanization of the robot is taking place. And there is a risk that there is a robotization of the human taking place. So the next 20 years, we are going to see a significant shift in how technology will proliferate. By 2045, in those 20 years, we will be in a world that we will not recognize today. We cannot deny then the digital age, and we need to harness it and see in which pathway we go forward. either a space of distinction or a place of extinction. Our cultural heritage, our rituals, our traditions to ground our fight for an enlightened existence have become even more important than ever before. And our attempt to deepen consciousness, rooted with our identity, may need to lean deeper into our ancestral past, our cultural heritage, to strengthen our position for the future. And our expert panel crosses several continents, with representations from Kenya, Nepal, South Sudan, Vietnam, me from Europe, UK. And in this session, we're going to explore some very important topics. Themes around community-led heritage preservation, international collaboration, cross-cultural exchange, revitalizing intangible traditions, inspiring and equipping new generations, war, peace, and shared prosperity. We're going to touch on the topics which are uncomfortable, but also uplifting, a continuum of great dialogue. The panel brings expertise in many formats, be that nutrition, gastronomy, comic books and cartoons, language, festivals and cultural identity, healing and empowering women and young people. This is all in this mix. It's a big panel. You will hear from these pioneering cultural leaders today, change makers who will quantum tunnel forward to achieve what seems impossible. Without further ado, let's bring forth the panel and let's introduce them. So let me start from Vietnam. Tang Huyen Duc is the Director General of the Center for Research and Promotion of Cultural Heritage, CCH, in Hanoi. He's leading efforts to safeguard and preserve and promote Vietnam's tangible and intangible cultural heritage through research, community engagement, and international collaboration. Binti, yes, let's give them a big round. You're right, the energy in the room is so important. Go with the energy, I always say. So Binti Gurung is the founder of Natural Foods, and she's based in Gandaki in the mountain regions of Nepal, and is looking at the indigenous food heritage and an advocate and founder of Natural Roots, leading efforts to revive and document Nepal's culinary traditions, promoting women's leadership and linking food culture to environmental and cultural identity. Omar Lali, please, a big round to our senior statesman here, is the Secretary General of the Shangwaya Welfare Association and leader of the Bajuni Cultural Heritage Project in Kenya, dedicated to revitalizing the endangered Bajuni language. Hands up if you've heard of the Bajuni language. You've done a good job. And his work is very much as an educationist to share the culture of the Bajuni through education advocacy and community empowerment. Dr. Rebecca Lorenz, please stand up. Stand up and be counted. It's always a good thing. Is the co-founder of Lakiri Collective, a South Sudanese NGO dedicated to preserving culture, especially in conflict of refugee situations, and empowering communities through multimedia arts, and serves as the Dean of the School of Journalism, Media and Communication Studies at the University of Juba. With all our panelists, you must meet them. To my left is Masani Kimani Wanjuru. I can see you clicking fingers out there because you've got a fan base. Otherwise known as Kimani and Kim. So for this conversation, I will refer to you as Kim, now that we are friends. Yes. And so Kim is a creative writing and performing artist, seasoned culture and arts journalist, and festival director of the Reveal Comic Art Festival. He's actively involved in local and international networks and promotes comic art and creative opportunities. He's a 2025 Commonwealth Journalist Associate of the Derek Ingram Press Fellow, which is run at Wolfson College, University of Cambridge. So, a big round for such an enlightened panel, and it's such a pleasure and privilege for me to be here. I'm going to start by taking us back to what this is all about, going deep into our inner soul and consciousness. So, let me start by asking the question, and I will start with Omar. What does heritage mean to you, and why does it matter? You have a microphone?
Thank you very much. I think you've already known my name. I'm Omar Lali, a retired educationist and specialize on early childhood education, but currently Secretary General, Shungwaya Welfare Association. A culture, to me, is an identity. Without culture, you lose your roots. I understand that a community, or Bajuni community for that matter, without culture, without identity, it will definitely not exist. So culture is the root, a cause of an identity, self-esteem, and also a recognition. Thank you.
What a brilliant answer. Let me go to Binti then. Binti, what does this term heritage mean to you, and why does it matter?
Thank you, Skonder, and thank you to British Council. This is my first time in Kenya, in fact, in this part of the world, and so glad to be here. Thank you. I've been meeting some amazing people in my stall, and because we work in food heritage, and we have so many common grains and crops and herbs that we've been sharing with the Kenyan and from people from Nairobi. It's really great. So we've been working in heritage for quite some time now, and for us, really, heritage is so important. It's so fundamental in the sense that we need heritage to keep us rooted, to really keep us rooted. I mean, in this world right now, like when things are changing so rapidly, you know, I come from the indigenous clan of Gurung. We have like about 60 recognized, legally recognized indigenous groups in Nepal, and 145, you know, and so all these indigenous groups who have their own traditions, languages, cultures, you know, and moving towards this very fast changing world, I think it's really important. And I was able to hear some panels yesterday, and I heard some of the things that was being discussed by the panelists, and I think there are some elements that I could relate to with the issues that was expressed yesterday. And I think, especially within Nepali context, yeah, like I said, in this very fast-changing world, we really need to know who we are to keep us really rooted, to know where we come from, and that's what heritage means. It's so fundamental.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So fundamental. I like that. There's more to be discussed about, you know, your place in the world and the pace at which you're redesigning and rethinking. Tang, let's go to you. So the idea of, you know, what does heritage mean to you, and why does it matter?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to the British Council for the invitation. It's it's great pleasure to be here in this very important and very meaningful dialogue today. So, yes, heritage is, to me, It's something that I inherited from my ancestors. It's in my body, my mind, and it will be created and will be sustained over time to keep that values to pass over my children's students, and great students. And let me cite a saying by our former President Ho Chi Minh, who led the country to gain independence from France in 1945. He said, let the culture be the beacon to lead the way of the nation. And whenever culture is there, your nation is there. So that is the way we think, we put perception about culture, cultural identity as national identity in Vietnam.
How wonderful. I really love the reference of Ho Chi Minh. And just coming back from Saigon, Ho Chi Minh myself, experiencing the breadth of culture and expression of the Vietnamese community was really special. Let's go to Rebecca, South Sudan. What do you think about this heritage conundrum?
I feel the need to position myself a little bit. We're in a heritage conference, and I'm here, and I'm sort of representing South Sudan. I'm an American, and I have been based in South Sudan for about 10 years, or 11 years, let's say. I'm a professor at the University of Juba, again for 11 years, and I also co-founded Leaky Kiri Collective. I'm an American of Jewish ancestry, and I want to bring that up because I have a complicated relationship to heritage in terms of what does heritage mean to me personally. I have a complicated relationship to heritage in the sense that my family is very disconnected from what might be called, what is Jewish heritage? Let's not get into that. That will take us for another, long time. But, so I do think though that I'm answering the question both from maybe my personal perspective, but also from the project perspective and my academic perspective, and also what I understand from the youth that we work with. And so I do think that my background gives me some insight into the youth who are feeling disconnected from this thing called heritage. Our project works with South Sudanese youth living in refugee settings in Uganda and Kenya. And, their relationship to South Sudanese heritage is complicated. So what is heritage? Heritage is about the past, and it's about memories. But in my project, or in our project, in Leaky Kiri's project, I think that it's important for me to say that I think we're redefining heritage through the project all the time. I think that the songs that we are recording, so our project is about South Sudanese women's song heritage, and the young women, 20 young women, are recording and documenting the song heritage of their elders from 4 communities, and we'll talk about that later. But so I think that every song that they record is kind of like giving us another insight into what does heritage mean to these elder women, because we're leaving the space open for them to decide what constitutes that category of song, what constitutes a marriage song, or a naming song, or a mourning song. So the heritage is getting defined all the time. That's my answer.
Thank you, Rebecca. You're dealing with a very complex issue now with refugees traveling in. There's a kind of post-war syndrome, PTSD. So heritage and culture really strengthens and resolves, in a sense, our identity in these transforming, disruptive spaces. Kim, the illustrator of stories, performance artist and writer, your perspective on heritage would be really, really insightful.
Thank you very much, and for our visitors from Vietnam, Nepal, welcome to Nairobi, and welcome to Africa. My name is Msanii Kimani Wawanjiro, and I'm in the area of cartoons, comics, and graphic novels. And we want to look at heritage and culture in that line. And for me, the two, heritage and culture, go side by side. And largely, then we look at it, or the question that comes to mind is, what's culture? So for me, is that when our societies decided that we will live as civilized beings and not animals like we're talking, we also then systematically decided that there are certain things that we must agree will be our guiding, our ways of relating with each other. So that there is the way or patterns that we established to relate as men, to relate as women, to relate as men and women, to relate to our children. When a kid is born, we say, we develop a certain way of saying that this is the way we want to relate to the people who will continue our being, our communities. So we developed certain ways of relating with children. We created lullabies, we created stories for them. As they advanced, we developed a way of making sure that we define the way they are transitioning from just being boys or girls into young adults. So a way of looking at them transcend into teenagerhood or teenhood. And we also set a way of how, that is when the blood is hot, there's certain things, rebelliousness. So we also develop a set of ways that we say, for the children, this is how we are going to relate to you. As they grew older, they also started their own families, and we said, when you're starting your own families, these are some of the things that you probably need to consider. You probably can't marry your sister. Certain ways that then we started putting certain values, we started developing norms, we started putting, defining our ways, and over time we also developed a way of making sure that this is passed on to the next generation. So cumulatively, this forms a body or knowledge. Both certain things are tangible, others are not tangible, and that collectively then forms for me what would say that both present and the past body of knowledge as heritage.
That's a complex philosophy and a vital sort of essential grounding of defining heritage. And just listening to all of you gives me great hope, because heritage is the root of who we are, in a sense. Omar, your project, the Bajani Coastal Cultural sort of linguistic program that you've created, is often sort of underrepresented in sort of mainstream narratives. How does your project navigate issues of visibility and recognition then? How did you create this?
Thank you very much. Very, very good question. And before I answer, I want to say I'm so happy that there are few people here know what is Bajuni and Kibajuni. I'm so delighted, because for a long time, we've been underrepresented by being hidden under Kiswahili culture for a long time. But actually, Kibajuni language or Bajuni community existed long before Kiswahili. In fact, Kibajuni gave birth to Kiswahili. And I know this will be a big debate and we'll leave it for another day. Yeah? Kiswahili is a dialect to me. It's not a language. It's not a culture. But I say this will be something for another day. Yeah? We have done a few things that now will give visibility and recognition. We've written books, Kibajuni textbooks for our children. We have recorded songs, poems, Kibajuni poems and riddles. We've also interviewed old people, men and women, Kibajuni origin, so that we got a lot of information. And all this has been recorded for our children and future generation. And this visibility, these activities definitely give us visibility and also recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. I mean, one of the things you spoke to me about was the recognition at the political level. And in the panel before, we talked about policy, government, etc. And you managed to convince the Ministry of Education and therefore radicalized, in a sense, the emergence of these books. And if you get chance, go to the stall in the exhibition area and you can experience these books. And also, you know, Kim's wonderful comics here tell all sorts of incredible stories. Let me go to Tang, because, you know, you've traveled probably the furthest of all our panelists. And so I want to give you some airspace, obviously. You all get airspace. So your work in Vietnam has really emphasized community-first approaches. How have local communities guided the priorities and outcomes of your heritage project?
Thank you very much. Yes, 16 hours on the airplane away from you. It's been a big pleasure again to be here. So thanks for the question. Back to my career as heritage specialist. Before I got involved in the British Council project, Cultural Heritage for Inclusive Growth, a pilot action research from Vietnam, Kenya, and Colombia. I worked at the UNESCO office in Hanoi. My major is in museum studies, but before that I worked closely with communities in various communities in Vietnam. Throughout my experience, I found that any interventions regarding safeguarding measures onto an ICH element should reach the consent and participation by the local community concerned. Because all the language of the project management or the administrative or the language of the legal system or even the UNESCO convention or the language of the researchers, cultural managers, resource controllers, not the communities themselves. And how to translate this language into understandable language and to make it they understand the benefits of these interventions from the beginning is very important. So I found that because we cannot represent or do anything about the others' cultures without their participation or consent. And that's the key. So when I got it, when this British Council project came, it aligns with my objectives. At that time, I worked as a freelancer, and I was invited by the British Council in Vietnam to do a community consultation. And it was a long trip to try to build trust from various community members, especially those who are the gatekeepers, like village elders or shamans in the village, who open all the gates. If they close the gates, nothing happened. So that's the key, and it was very important for us to try to listen to them and to identify the needs, the challenges they face, what expectations they have, and what they need. And also we also look into the perspectives of the livelihood and communities, because in Vietnam it's a very different system that often huge project from the government is often implemented on the top-down approach, and it's managed by cultural authorities from various levels. and we doubt about the benefits, whether the beneficiaries receive all these profits or understand the goals or objectives and really take the ownership of those things. So that was why we spent time with communities to find out what's happening in the community. So that was why we used that approach.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, what's interesting here is the connection through the gatekeeper, the elder, and how that negotiation takes place. It has to be done in a very respectful approach. With somebody in the previous panel talked about deepening your contextual analysis of what is very local. Look, we're talking about a conference here that's amplifying and accelerating the digital age and its relationship with heritage. Binti, you're up in the mountains. What do you care about digital? I mean, you've got a beautiful life of mountains. I've seen the images. I've seen what you do. You extract, forage the most delicious recipes, and does the digital, you know, does it enter your sphere? Is it important?
Digital, going into digital space has become something that, whether we like it or not, we have to get into it, you know. Just to explain the context behind it, I have to explain that we are working in the Gandagi province, which is in the central part of Nepal. And there are various districts within that province, and we are working in the highland, up in the mountains in the northern part of Nepal, and also in the hill, which is the central middle part of Nepal. And the traditional practices, the food practices, food heritage is different, because in the hills you have a lot of dense forest. So the villagers, the indigenous community, they are very, they share a very close relationship with the forest, you know. They go into the forest not just for food, but for their other sustainable practices, like, you know, they get a lot of plants from which they make, you know, baskets, and they make foraging bags, and they get like herbs. In fact, when we are doing a little bit of our side research about food heritage back in the 1950s, which sadly is rapidly disappearing, this whole foraging herb practices. But in the 1950s, from my own community, the Gurung community, the forest was considered a pharmacy. I'm sure it might be relatable within the indigenous communities here in Kenya also. Maybe you might have herbal practices here. But for the Gurung people, up until 1950s, 60s, 70s, you could tell that the elders, they were going to the forest. They knew exactly which plant to harvest, how much to harvest, and what those herbs were used for, you know. Of course, there were no hospitals nearby. People had to walk for many days in order to reach to the hospital. So they also had to rely on the plants for treatment and cures. Somebody has already documented about 250 different types of herbs used for various purposes, from diarrhea, for cough, cold, fever, you name it, you know. And for our project, which we did last year, we went to 8 different communities working with mothers group, women's group in the highlands and in the hillside. And there is a particular plant which I think is not here. It's called Himalayan rhubarb. And the rhubarb actually is really amazing, because it has, which I didn't know, like the women shared this knowledge with me, that the rhubarb has so many functions, you know, like the plant itself. We have a little bit of display in our stalls, so if anybody would like to come and see it, please do. But the rhubarb is actually used, the stalks are used for young people when they're up in the mountains and they have no water. When they're hiking, they just suck on the stalk of the rhubarb, and that quenches their thirst, you know. And you could also use the skin of the rhubarb stalk to wash vessels, you know, kitchen utensils, and because of the component that's in there is really helpful for cleaning the vessels. And the roots of rhubarb is used for dyeing purposes, carpets and textiles, and another use, especially for women whenever they have overbleeding, when they're having periods, it also eases into this kind of thing. So you have a lot of like medicinal benefits out of rhubarb, and that's just one plant, right? And
But Binti, you haven't mentioned digital.
yes, and yeah, I'm coming to that. The thing is, like I said, I mean, I've been working in food for so long, and which I didn't know. So you have a lot of young indigenous people who are growing up in the city and who are abroad, you know, the diaspora community. What would they know about this, you know? And how do you make this knowledge accessible to them, right? So we have created a website, an archival, online archival.
So you are working with the digital sphere.
Yes. So through this space, we are actually providing this knowledge. And like I said, whether we like it or not, we have to get into the digital space, and it's been really helpful.
No, I think that's really, I mean, interesting point about diaspora. So the Gurkha community from Nepal, a lot of them are based in Kent, and I've just come back out of Folkestone. Folkestone Triennial does a public art program, and I met some of the Gurkha community there. And you're very true. They might have the posh British accent, but where is the rooted connection with the homeland, the ancestral technique? I'm going to go to Kim. Kim, we spoke a lot about, you know, the idea of ecology, enterprise, the comic community, and you work in many spheres. You have regional partnerships, but you also work with international partnerships. Tell us how the international partnerships, the regional partnerships work, and in which way the digitalization of the work you do actually accentuates these relationships for sustainable enterprise, but more so impact in terms of the wealth of a citizen's existence.
Thank you. So it started. International connection started a while back when we organized an exhibition to just celebrate comics, cartoons and comics and graphic novels in Kenya from independence to, I think, 2013, 2012. An exhibition that we co-curated with Chief Nyamwea, a cartoonist called Chief Nyamwea, into animation as well, and we're working in partnership with the Goethe Institute. So the exhibition went to tour Germany, but when we came back, my question was, 5-10 years down the line, if somebody came to Kenya and they wanted to know who are the comic artists, both present, what's the history of Kenyan comics, what is it that they can pick and quickly get insights of that? So that gave rise to a research question, thinking like a scholar. What is it that we can do? So we decided, gave the proposal that let's do a book that would document this, and 10, 15, 20, 30 years, somebody would not come and just look at, okay, who are the pioneers, comic artists? What are they doing? What were the trends? What were the stories? What were the struggles? So we did a book called Ink and Pixel, The Wanderers, Stories of Comics in Kenya, and it was launched in 2017. But even as we were developing that, it became very clear that it was a very male-dominated scene. And so the next question was, where are the women comic artists? Are they there? What are they struggling with? What are their stories? So when we're grappling with that question, the British Council announced their international collaboration grant in 2021. And as usual is that you need a partner in the UK or in the region. So I went online and did a Google search and looking for an institution in the UK that works with comics. Luckily I found an organization called Ladies in Comics, or LDC, and wrote a blind email. I'm saying, I'm so-and-so, this is what I'm doing, and this opportunity has come. Would you want to partner with us? And say, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Either, I don't know, reply
if
or...
you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah. So, got a pleasant surprise. Dr. Nicola Stratton of LDC wrote back and said, you know Dr. Nicola, yes. Said, yeah, we can work together. And said, oh, nice. So, we started brainstorming and saying, okay, first and foremost, me telling her about the comic scene in Kenya, how it is, our stories, and perhaps let me just do a little poll here, and from here you will be able to know the absorption or the interest in comics, but also you'll be able to tell the generation, the different generation by the consumption that they've had. So by a show of hand, how many know of Juha Kalulu? Those are the old guys. Yeah. How many of you remember Bogi Benda? Okay, again, those are old guys. How many remember African film? Lance Spearman. Okay. I was Kola Fumeti. How many remember Manuele? How many remember Pichadithi? All right. You'll see the change in hands soon. Okay. How many remember Super Striker? I told you.
I want to watch Super Striker or read.
How many remember Shujaz?
Right.
All right. So, I mean, the consumption of comics in Kenya is there, and people have really interacted with it. So, but if you look at it again, without showing distinction, you'll be able to know where the women or the male-dominated. So, we got to say, let's tell the stories, or let's find the women comic artists, and let's tell their stories. But then, along the way, I don't know what miracle happened at the British Council, and then they said, because we wanted like for £5,000 to do the research in Kenya, but then along the way, they said, oh, you can apply for a little more money, and said, so I told Dr. Nicola,
it's called underspend.
So I told Dr. Nicola, okay, let's dream a little bit bigger, and let's look for women comic artists in not just in Kenya. Let's look for them in Uganda. Let's look for them in Tanzania. Let's look for them in Rwanda. So we ended up with 4 countries in the region, but also in the UK we said, let's look for women comic artists with heritage from these 4 countries. And so that's how Reveal was born. It was such an exciting experience. So,
give him a big clap. Come on, guys. Reveal.
So that's how the whole thing came up. But I've always then I think the British Council are a little bit happy with what we have done with this one. So they gave us a little extension to do some little more work. And so we started working with 3 Kenyan women artists and with a women group in Kajiado to just relate the stories of climate change. And in many instances, you might not think that there is a correlation between, say, cartoons, comics, and even climate change, or even the cultural practices. So when we were doing this, and they came to Kenya, the UK guys came to Kenya, it was at the height of some really serious drought in the country. And so in Kajiado, families had lost their livestock. And so in our interactions there, Mama Agnes Leina told us, with her group told us, in an instance like this one, because we passed through a homestead where cows had died, you know, you could even smell the death, you know, the carcasses in the air. So he told us, in a family like this one, when probably things get back to normal, this family might need to restock. And the fastest way to restock is either buy or dowry.
Buy or?
Get dowry.
Oh, dowry, right, yes.
Yeah. So a young man knows you cannot be able to get the number of cows that will be needed. So the girl would probably end up being married to an old man. And an old man will not marry a girl who's not been cut. So again, the vicious cycle continues. And so we worked with, our artists work with women in Kajiado to just capture the whole experience of FGM, and then it was translated into a comic form. And now connect this to the digital, because that one was done as a digital, a soft, an online comic form, and dissemination was to be done in the same way. And then when it came to the time to launch it, wondering, okay, we just suddenly realized that there are no spaces where comic artists can meet on a monthly basis to exchange ideas, to know what are you working on, what ideas do I need to explore, what's this. So we approached Alliance Française and said, can you help us with the launch? But more significant also, can you be hosting on a monthly basis an event that would be bringing together comic artists to just share ideas, or if somebody has a book to launch, let them launch, listen to the old pioneer comic artists, and so on. So that's how even the Reveal Comic as a platform was born. And it's, continued to have local vibes and international vibes as well.
I like that.
Thanks.
So global ties, local vibes. So this definitely embedded within the kind of stories that you embed within the comic. And when you think of comic, you think of comical, the idea of humor. And you're dealing with some complex issues. And there is a kind of subtle twist of humor that sits within these complex topics. Rebecca, let's move on to the complex topic of life right now. You're in South Sudan, dealing with refugee communities, looking at the idea of healing. And, British Council's raison d'etre is about peace, shared prosperity, and also the idea of international relations and collaboration. When you've got a refugee community expelled because of war, how do you deal with that? And just tell us what likri means. And am I pronouncing that right? No. I knew I would get it wrong.
Okay, thank you for that. So as I said, I'm a co-founder of something called Liki Kiri. Liki Kiri.
Liki Kiri.
Yeah, Liki Kiri collective. And Liki Kiri means stories, actually. Means stories in the Bari language. And Bari language is, many different communities use a language that's related to Bari. So Kakwa, Pojalu, Mundari all speak of aspects of Bari language and have the word Liki Kiri or Loki Kiri in their language. And so it's used sometimes to even translate parables in the Bible. It's used to translate history. It's used to translate stories. So that's the name of our organization, Liki Kiri Collective. So we see stories and storytelling as being very foundational to how communities will pass down traditions. And it's integral to basically the well-being and of communities, storytelling and stories. And in our organization, we share stories in many different formats, and we work with communities through cultural heritage, arts and humanities, and creativity, but stories form the basis of all of that because we see storytelling happening in so many different mediums. It can happen through embroidery, it can happen through comic books, it can happen through film, it can happen through, so many different genres and materials that we work within. So in this project, we work often in South Sudan itself, actually. I mean, we're based in South Sudan, and much of our work happens in South Sudan. But in this project, we chose to work with South Sudanese communities that are living in Kakuma refugee camp. And in there, we work with youth and elders from the Dinka and Nuer communities. And we also work in Rhino Camp in Uganda. And there we work with Kakwa and Avokaya communities. So we work with 4 different communities with 4 different languages, 4 different histories, 4 different relationships to South Sudan. So the root, or the 4 different heritages, and maybe many more different heritages, because again, as I said, I think different people, different generations and different people have different relationships to heritage and define it in different ways, especially in a country coming out of many, many, many years of war, where some of the root of the problem is different understandings of history, different kind of like attachments to different narratives. So we see storytelling as being sort of a really conflict-sensitive and very powerful way for people to access histories in an intercultural and intergenerational way. So it becomes something that is rooted in people's own understanding, like it's rooted in, you could say, indigenous tradition, storytelling. So it's not something that has to be imposed outside, like a policy on peace or a mechanism of, people talk about what are peace mechanisms, like what are we going to use to, so, but these things, sometimes we overcomplicate things. It's sort of, storytelling is a very sort of like an elemental way that people connect. And so we sort of, that we find that very generative. People, so in our work, we actually are intentional in bringing together people in what we call story circles. Now, we don't imagine that people weren't doing this before. It's not as if we're saying we're inventing something new and that we're, but because of war and because of displacement, and because also, I would say, because of economic and financial distress in South Sudan, as well as in the refugee communities, people aren't practicing some of these coming togethers as much as they may have in the past.
But you're creating the environment through the Likikiri project to enable the joy of heritage and in a sense an intercultural dialogue between 4 communities come together to create this kind of ascending new identity that's strengthened by the root of who they are. And without the root of who they are, the strength is slightly diminished, really. And you're having to reinvent and reincarnate yourself in this scenario. Folks, you've probably got loads of questions out there, I'm hoping. Are there any kind of issues, that you want to raise or bring to the table with our panelists here today? We have a question here. Could we get a roving mic? First question.
Thank you very much.
And introduce who you are.
Oh, hi everyone.
And stand up if you want.
Oh, God.
Energize.
Hi everyone. I'm Connie Bell. I'm from, I'm actually from the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica.
Oh, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. But I live in England. And I have been living in England for a very long time. I just hold on to my accent for a political stance in my identity.
And so you should. It's a great accent. One of my favorites.
So anyway, I work with an organization called Decolonizing the Archive. And from that perspective and that lens, I'm going to shoot some questions to you. So to both Kimani and to this lady here, I can't remember your name. Rebecca. You mentioned speaking about community.
Don't worry, we've got another mic.
You mentioned, okay, nice and loud. You mentioned working with all these very interesting groups. But I'm noting that there's a lot of dependency on grants. Now, my question to you is, based on especially excitement that we see happening in Kenya, where the youth are actually galvanizing outside of money Yeah? They're not depending on money from any of these usual infrastructures. They're doing it very local as opposed to the other way around. Yeah? How are you creating a practice that kind of embodies examples that other people can look at to continue the work that they're doing? Because so far you've been the two amazing projects that you've mentioned, the one with the women, totally amazing, even the comic strip thing. But then how do they sustain that? Sustainability is a big deal because...
Good question. Sustainability, how do you sustain your projects beyond the grant dependency?
I have one more question.
Both of you. Oh, you have one more question?
Yeah, I do. But
Okay, can you keep it brief, please, because we have other
No,
questions.
I don't. Let him answer that one first.
It's coming, it's coming.
Okay.
And anybody else lined up? Put your hand up. Okay.
It's a very interesting question, and particularly directed to comics. You realize that it's a very nascent industry in Kenya and even in the region. Yet, in spite of the kind of potential that it has probably not received the right backing that it needs. This is, for instance, let me just illustrate the way the journey started and the reason why we even got into it. So, part of the things that we did during our project with Dr. Nicola was for her to come and experience Africa and the comic scene in Africa, but also for me to go and just experience how the comic scene is in the UK. And I went to a festival in, it's called Thought Bubble, but you see the dynamics of a festival. But what was for me really something that happened that said we must do something about it is when I visited one of the biggest comic book in central London. 2 floors of just nothing but comics, Gosh comics. And we went, I was saying that I can live here forever, but when I was discussing with the guys, the managers, the proprietors there, and asked them, do you have any comics from Africa? Said, no, we don't. And I asked why? I said, it's not that we don't need to stock or we can't stock them. The thing is that we don't have information about what kind of books, what kind of comic books are there, or the kind of comic scene is in Kenya. And so, sadly, as it was, I said, let me come back and see what is it that we can do to change that. So we said, one, we need to share information, we need to consolidate, pack, and just basically know that there is or there can be information about what is happening here. But then, even when we were doing that, we also realized that it's not just a problem out there. Even internally, the perception is still not very good, very good. Because and this is a sad example that had happened once. There was a publishing house that was dedicated to comic books, and it published some of the most memorable comic books that we have now, like the one I mentioned, Manuele, Abunuasi, and so on. It was called Sasasema. It was started by a lady called Laila Luz. And then a local publisher bought her out. And from the time they bought her out, they have never published even a single new title. Yeah? And even the titles that she had published and that were in existence have never been republished or reissued. So we realized that we were dealing with a much bigger problem than this, than what we were saying. So we said we need to do 2 things. One, build a vibrant community of comic artists, creators, and so on. But along the way also, let's try and work on building an ecosystem that would support of this, so that then we are able to make it sustainable. So for starters, we then had to say that any help can come. And this is, I remember, it is a time when we were struggling with this, that Tika and the
Sorry
Brain
to
Fund,
rush you, Kim.
yeah,
We've been told that we have to.
that came into existence. So in the long, I mean, what we're doing right now is we are trying to interest other players to come on board to help build the ecosystem. And the ecosystem means creating new markets, but at the same time also working with artists to show them the various ways, the various possibilities, the various storylines, or the various things that can be created, right from comics in education, comics in school, and just comics for entertainment, but also comic for social issues, for social justice, so that then the market can be able to sustain it.
Okay, Kim, I'm going to have to stop you there.
Last one.
I'm really sorry, but here's the thing: we can carry the conversation on outside of this forum because the detail is outside of these rooms. This is an introduction to. Rebecca, I'm very sorry, we're going to have to finish here. But, we've had an incredible session, and sorry you didn't get a chance to ask your question.
I need to ask Rebecca this very, very quickly.
Okay, very quickly.
Rebecca,
because it sounds important.
I'm from Uganda. My name is Moses Serugo. I'm really very interested that, Rhino Camp, you're working with the community, but I'm curious to know how are the refugees, how are you fostering harmony between the refugees and the host communities? Because right now there's a lot of resentment regarding refugees in Uganda. They are affecting our climate. Yes, we are hosting them, right? But there's a lot of resentment. And then when you come to Kampala, where I live, the South Sudanese are really very brash people that people don't really like.
So the question
so how are
is
you fostering harmony between, the host communities and the refugee communities?
Thank you for your question, Rebecca. This is a complex question. And if you want to take it offline, you can take it offline.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but I do think this might be outside of my docket in a way, because our project, I think I have luckily I can tell you that I have a partner here from Rhino Camp. In fact, I really want to say this quickly. I actually wanted to kind of redefine my role in this panel. I had talked to the moderator a little bit about having my partners in dialogue with me, because this idea of global, local, and I felt like, so I have a partner here from Rhino Camp who's been at our booth. We have a booth, Leaky Kiri, I think we're only open till the end of today, but you can go visit and see more about our project. But he's there, or might be in this audience, I don't know. And so he would be a better person to talk to, because he is the program manager of Community Development Center in Rhino Camp. And he's South Sudanese, and he would be able to talk more. But in our
it was
project,
in the context.
We worked specifically.
It was in the context of storytelling.
Okay, I'm
going
to stop the call right now. Okay, so thank you very much, panel. Rebecca and my good friend from Uganda, is it? You will meet in the Likiri, and you will speak there. My friend from the Caribbean, pick it up with Kim afterwards, please. Just to say that, just to summarize, it's been an incredible panel. It's clear that we need heritage to be rooted to define ourselves, and without culture, our identity will be easily lost and hustled and muscled out of existence. And we have to, in a way, embrace the digital age, whether we like it or not. Can we give a big round of applause for this panel? And we've got some uncomfortable truths to discuss outside of here, so let's do that as well. Over, back to you.
Thank you so much. My photographer is here, so please, we'd like a photo with the panel while I give instructions for lunch. Who's ready for lunch? Masaya cha hula. Okay. So, lunch is being served differently. He's here. Lunch is being served differently from yesterday, okay? So I will ask us all to exit this space through here, behind the screens, and up the stairs to the back of the restaurant. As you may have noticed, the population of little people in the museum grounds shot up, right? So we want to make sure that we're not interrupting their flow, right? Because we're all users of this common space. So you will walk up to there, you will get a packed lunch, you'll receive a packed lunch, and then you have a choice. Either you can enter the restaurant from behind and just go and sit at the restaurant tables and eat there, or you can come back into this space and eat here, or you can go to the reflection corner. Remember the one I talked about yesterday? It's the reflection corner because it hosts an exhibition of protests in Kenya from 1963. However, they have something else. Onyiro 1, Onyiro 2. Who knows what that means? It's game time. So they have kati, they have bano, they have blada. Your inner child can be resurfaced and you can feel like the small children here. So for our people online, we will see you back at 2 o'clock. You can also enjoy your lunch. And please remember we're exiting through here and our facilities in terms of washrooms are in the parking lot to the left. You'll see the portable loos there. One last thing. Let the children be and let us be. Okay, thank you. One last thing. There's the Cultural Protection Fund, which I think that you were seeing. The last photos showed examples of what CPF actually does and invests in and protects. You also saw a QR code. Please sign up to their newsletter. It has a lot of wonderful information about opportunities that are happening across the world and also how you can get involved in cultural protection. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.